New details on that upside-down Delta crash at Toronto's airport last month. Canadian authorities say a landing gear support broke as the plane was landing, and then that crash ended up ripping off a wing, ending with the plane rolling upside down, spraying jet fuel all over. Incredibly, all 80 passengers and crew on board made it out alive, although 21 were injured. CNN transportation analyst Mary Schiavo is with us now. Okay, Mary, so I guess the question is, why did the landing gear support break?
Well, the Safety Bureau of Canada, the Canada Transport Safety Investigation Group, provided a lot of detail in this preliminary report. I mean, it's a lot of detail. Often you don't see this much detail, but they have given us three big clues. First of all, they said they defined what a hard landing is. And they said for this aircraft, a hard landing is anything other than a descent of 600 feet per minute. How fast are you headed down? And they mentioned that this particular operation for this aircraft said, yeah, you shouldn't exceed 720 feet per minute. But then they added that this plane, as it was landing, was descending, had a feet per minute of 1100. So that exceeds the hard landing and exceeds the guidelines for this aircraft. So we already know they're headed that way in their investigation, that it just was coming down too steeply. It made too rapid of a descent. The other thing they said is they looked at, and that's why they got what's called a sink rate warning. An alarm went off in the cockpit saying sink rate was too great. The second thing they focused on was the pitch of the aircraft as it was flaring to land. Now, what that means is when you come down and you're just about to touch on the runway, the pilot, puts the nose up and that plane literally settles, breaks the airflow over the wings and settles onto the runway. Now, they mentioned in this report that your pitch should be somewhere between 3 degrees nose up and 8 degrees nose up, but they mentioned that this plane was only at 1 degrees. Now, they don't draw any conclusions. That's not their job in a preliminary report, but those are two big clues as to where they're headed in this investigation. The third thing they mentioned extensively is they went through a lot of different components in the aircraft and said there was no indication of pre-existing damage. There was no indication of pre-existing problems. There were no problems with the engine. There was no prior problems with the landing gear or the wings. Now, that doesn't mean there couldn't be some hidden problems, and they're going to take care of that through metallurgical examination. In other words, they're going to put all these parts under careful microscopic examination to see if maybe there was a hidden metal flaw or whatever. But they've given us a lot of clues in this preliminary report, and as preliminary reports go, it's pretty extensive.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. Mary, thank you so much for taking us through that. We really appreciate it.
All right, we've got more breaking news right here in the Situation Room. Canadian transportation officials have just released a preliminary report on that Delta plane crash in Toronto last month. The images, of course, very hard to forget. The flight from Minneapolis flipped upside down when it landed at the Pearson International Airport in Toronto. Thankfully, there were no fatalities, but 21 people were injured. I want to go live right now to CNN safety analyst, the former FAA safety inspector, David Susi. David, thanks for coming in. Thanks for helping us break down this report from the Canadians.
All right, there's a couple of key points in it, Wolf. One is that there was a rapid descent just seconds before the touchdown. So that means that the aircraft encountered some kind of turbulence, or it could have been from wingtip vortices from the prior aircraft that took off. So at the very last second before they were coming in, last seconds, it dropped very quickly right down onto that landing gear. The second piece that's really important is the fact that it hit on that landing gear and that it fractured the landing gear and fractured the wing support as well, which resulted in that wing coming off. So there's a lot left to learn as to why this happened, why that dropped there, but it gives us a lot of clues as to what might have caused this accident.
Was there anything that surprised you big time in this report?
There really isn't. We looked at it ahead of time. We had those videos that we could see before, and you could kind of see visually that the aircraft did get a sudden drop. The question is, well, what surprises me is that they haven't produced any evidence as to whether that was caused by a movement by the pilot or whether it was caused by the turbulence outside. So that's what the investigators will be looking at now. But as far as anything surprising in the report, no, it seems right in line with what we had thought happened to this aircraft.
And the images we're showing our viewers now are newly released images that the Canadians just put out. You know, when we were covering that crash and that plane flipped over, it was upside down on the tarmac, I said to myself, that's pretty extraordinary. I've followed a lot of plane crashes, but it's pretty unusual for a plane to come in for a landing and then all of a sudden land and then crash and flip over upside down. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it's absolutely a strange situation. A lot of things had to come together. But one of the things I'd like to point out is because of the advancements in technology, there were no serious injuries, no fatalities in this accident. The fact that the seats were secured more securely than they had been in the past due to regulatory changes, the fact that the aircraft wing, the way that it came off, prevented the fuselage from tearing apart, all of these things that saved lives were things that were anticipated by engineers and designed into the aircraft. So I think it's a real boon, a real feather in the cap of those that do the engineering and those that responded as well.
And it's underscored how important it is to have your seatbelt on and have it tight. Even if you think everything is going to be smooth, you have to have those seatbelts tightly fastened. David Susi, thanks very much for joining us.